Hello everyone, I'm Lauren Mistry, the Deputy CEO at Youth Employment UK. I am going to take you through the Good Youth Employment Benchmark findings, but today is all about what we've learned from the benchmark. So I'm gifting over some of my job, and in each session that follows, Explore Experience Employment, you'll hear the real life stories of how our employers are putting this data and information and intelligence into practice. So we will go through, we will have that moment to celebrate the Good Youth Employment Benchmark. We've heard a lot today already about connections and systems. I've been frantically scribbling over my notes because some people have already said it, but also making the connections myself too. And I wanted to start with a little story. So I travelled here this morning by train from Bedford, and it was quite a frantic morning, an alarm that goes off at 5 o'clock, managed to wake my little boy up, and he was quite sad because I wasn't going to take him to school. The train was delayed, there was a man in my seat, and all the while getting lots of WhatsApp messages from all of the team who were stuck on the M6 in an accident, as the empty chairs in the room are testament to this morning. So I got out and I was going to walk because Birmingham and the train station are some of my all-time favourite places to be. If you do catch me today in any of the breaks, if you could talk to me about really good train stations and trains, I'm here for it. I don't look like I might be super interested in the beautiful structure of train stations, but I am. So I was going to walk through Birmingham and find myself here today, but instead I got a taxi. And I got into the back of the taxi and I kept telling the driver where I wanted to go. And it was a big taxi, 6 seats in the back, and he just didn't know what I was saying. And I wasn't sure if we were calling it IET, Austin Court. Some of you that got a taxi here might have had the same problem here today too. So we did this interaction 3, maybe 4 times, and I'm just saying the same things over and over again to this man. And what he did was get out of his seat and come and get in the back of the taxi. And for about 4 seconds, I was a little bit frightened for my own self. But he came out and got in the back of the taxi and sat in the seat opposite and said, "Where are you going? Can you show me?" And so I did. So I showed him my phone screen. I felt like a tourist. I promise I've been to Birmingham before. I come a lot. And he was like, "Okay, I know exactly where that is." And just for a moment, I thought, oh, gosh, this is my anecdote that I'm going to tell at the beginning of my session today. Because we have that a lot. We constantly tell young people what we want and what we're expecting and what we are. And we just keep saying it, and we say it louder, and we say it again. And we might then invent a new skill or a different way of saying it, because no one's quite said it like this before. And we just constantly keep saying, the destination is here, the destination is here. And they don't know. They don't know. They're not aware. They can't connect to where they're going. But actually, if we got out of the front seat and sat in the back and actually had that moment of connection to go, can you show me where you want to go and I can help you get there? Wouldn't that be all the better for everybody? So I was quite grateful because Birmingham is one of my favourite places. I did double his tip that I would normally give because he was just such a good man. I thought, actually, you are going to make my session all the better because you did take that moment to build a connection. And if we were to go a bit wild and think that to the systems that we all work within, if we did just take a minute, show the destination that we wanted young people to be at and recognise where they're at right now as a busy, stressed woman that hadn't eaten yet, we could all do all the better. And that is what the Good Youth Employment Benchmark is all about. We have heard from our fantastic youth ambassadors about the Youth Voice Census. It is really sad every year to see and hear the reality of where young people are. And it's also frustrating as a membership organisation to hear employers who are absolutely doing their best and really want to connect and understand the systems better. But it doesn't always happen. It isn't always the thing that we can get round to, the translation. What I read in the Youth Voice Census every year is what's missing for young people. It is that connection. The difference with the Youth Voice Census is it tells us not just what we're doing to people, but it tells us how world ready they are and how world of work ready they are too. And there's a lot of similarities between that. But the more we keep doing to young people, we keep telling them to do more careers or to do more work experience. But when they do those things and we don't connect them, we don't put in the post support, we don't measure data accurately, we don't keep in touch with them, they constantly feel like they're going through these programs and they're going through a system, but it's not for them at the end. They can never connect and they can never understand what it was. So whilst Youth Employment UK has always had a way that we ask employers to sign up to standards and charters and the long-standing members, I'm looking for you, Ian, you've probably signed 6 or 7 different charters at Youth Employment UK of good youth employment practice. Actually, the benchmark is the game changer in all of that. It is about ensuring employers are doing good with the resources that they have, but it's about monitoring and measuring where the connections can work, who it works for. And so, as Laura was saying earlier, this is how we start getting to the how. And to be really clear, this is how we get to the how for all young people and then connect it for those who are most in need and most disadvantaged in our systems too. So, the Good Youth Employment Benchmark is a first of its kind digital tool. It has been kindly supported with some funding from the Youth Futures Foundation, but it has also been really well received and respected across the industry too. We have been so pleased to work with a strategic advisory group who include the Careers and Enterprise Company and linking it to their employer standards, and also many of the kind of combined authorities, employers in the room, to really shape a tool that is able to be accessible and useful for employers, but also start to tell us some of the data and dig into the background of it too. It is where we start to bridge that practice gap. Employers complete the Good Youth Employment Benchmark, and then we look at the marginal wins that they can make across 3 months, 6 months, 12 months to make a difference. It isn't a tool of shame, it's a tool of opportunity. So in terms of what we found this year when we opened the Good Youth Employment Benchmark, there it is. The data we're going to talk about today was completed across the summer months this year. And actually, the organisations who completed the Good Youth Employment Benchmark were responsible for over 40,000 Explore activities. These Explore activities are anything to do with early engagement of young people. So a lot of the school activities you might undertake, assemblies, CV building workshops, which young people really value, but it's also early engagement opportunities that you might do in places like the job centre. The employers that completed the benchmark were responsible for 18,000 employment opportunities and 3,000 work experience placements across the year. The organisations were split, 18% were SMEs and 82% were large employers. In your brochure pack today, there's quite a lot more detail as to the who, the how, the what, the where and the why. But we're going to pick out 3 key themes that we heard. So we heard on a number of different layers and levels about connecting networks. Perhaps unsurprisingly, most organisations use mediators, whether that be schools directly or other providers within the space to do their Explore activities primarily, but for some and a large majority, they're using providers for their experience networks too. That is great, and for the most part, that works really, really well. It means that employers are able to reach more places in the UK, they're able to reach more young people, and they are able to utilise the knowledge and experience of other networks. So 81% of Explore activities were delivered through a provider, and 38% were delivered through experience for our work experience placements too. When we think about building and connecting with those networks, one of the biggest things we found was that employers are catching up to do more, to go out more, to respond to the challenges that we are hearing, the skills deficits they see within their workplace. But what we are also understanding is that we can't just flood the marketplace with opportunities and have all young people get a job. The NEET figures tell us that. It isn't just that there aren't enough opportunities for young people, it is that young people aren't building the connections. And connecting to those networks starts early for young people. And the more we can do in those environments, the better we can measure them, the better we will all be in 5 years' time, and we can really celebrate some really fantastic news as we stand on this stage. What was quite surprising, though, is the number of employers who don't keep in contact with any of the young people that they are supporting, seeing and hearing. Now, we know data protection, we know lots of We know lots of different things about how we need to safeguard and protect young people in those moments. But those employers are going out and they're doing a lot, but young people aren't recognising and remembering who they are. They aren't recalling it because they don't feel part of it. They're not sure what the next part of the journey is. So why do they remember that guy that came in and told them about engineering? That was just a moment in time for them. That was a moment of just receptive listening and not active engagement for them to build forward. So 8% of employers offer the opportunity to stay in contact in any way after work experience, which is a massive missed opportunity for employers. Even less than that, stay in contact after explore activities too. Part of that could be to do because it's delivered through a mediator, but for the most part, employers just aren't connecting that actually, if we start speaking to 14-year-olds now, in 5 years' time, we might not be scratching our heads so much as to why we can't find people to work for us too. We looked to our second finding, which was all about creating evidence and evaluation. Now, in terms of evidence, evaluation data, there's a couple of people here who this is their favourite subject, but for most employers, they are just trying to engage, fill skills gaps and recruit. Lots of employers do this activity because it is really important and they are passionate about it. You are here in the room today, but as soon as someone starts talking about ROI, impact, data, how did you collect it? It's pretty terrifying, particularly when you just want to do good and you know that if you just saw that group of 5 young people, the impact you will make will be better, but it won't look great on a sheet of paper somewhere. So Sharon's nodding along, she knows what we're talking about here. And employers struggle in 2 ways. They struggle in the way that's really, it can feel overwhelming to collect data, to collect insight for young people. But they also struggle because they are using mediators. And so they're not always in the room when young people are there. And there are moments, you know the vibes, you know if you're attracting people. I can see the ones on their phone that aren't having the most enjoyable time, and I can see the ones nodding along. If you aren't there, if you aren't in the room, and if you aren't sending some of kind of your apprentices or young people in your organisation in, you don't feel the vibes. And actually, those that are looking at LinkedIn, they won't feel the vibe of this day, but I do hope they feel like they're missing out. In terms of those moments then, it isn't the fault of the employer or the mediator that this data isn't collected. We do need more tools, more resources to start, but there are some things we can do for now. We can start asking for feedback and we can start giving it to young people too. We can start by designing programs at all levels that have learning outcomes. We can start with some of the really simple kind of smaller steps that then enable us to start looking back. If we don't have any learning objectives, what are we measuring the value, the quality of the program that young people are engaging with? And what's most surprising, I think, to me is that actually we never ask young people if they enjoyed it. For the most part, employers aren't doing surveys, and actually they do it less in the moments where they have access to the most young people. So when we are in those explore moments where you might have a class of 3,000 young people, a quick poll, a moment to ask them is so hugely valuable, and we miss out. So we don't start to kind of capture all of the things that we could do. What that means then is, for the most part, when we are working with mediators or we're working with those groups, we aren't always seeing the benefit of it. We don't, there's a lack of kind of confidence of asking the good critical questions as to who's going to be in the room, what do they need, how can I make sure this session best meets those needs, and that young people learn something hugely valuable out of this. They make a connection, or they just know they don't want to work for me, but they've had a great experience being able to look at it. What we see then in the data from the benchmark is that around 20%, some will see their targeting and the work that they're doing resulting in more of those underrepresented groups that they were looking for starting to apply for other opportunities. But for the most part, it's because they don't feel like they started with a good youth employment strategy in the first place. They don't feel like they started from a great point of knowing what they were looking for, and now they're trying to catch up with data, which doesn't quite make sense. What we are super thrilled to be able to share, though, is that, and what we've always known, is that when work is good, It's really blooming good. We hear it in the census every year. I know we have just heard that work, stress, pressure is changing, and we all feel that. We're all super tired. We have worked in this system for a long time, and we're still waiting to see a lot of change to come to. But our employers put in the most effort and put in the most into the employment opportunities. And that's a really fair and valuable way to do it. And for those employers who are taking part in the benchmark, they had been active and proactive in making sure that there were personalised learning programmes, personalised development programmes, buddy systems and mentoring where it was available too. We have this year a fantastic base of amazing case studies, really good examples of the ROI of putting in the investment of young people as you employ them, and then what that will mean. Part of that is the work that we've done with the members. When we did our pilot for this, when we did our pilot for the benchmark and we were testing the data, only 15% had a youth employment strategy. So we've worked quickly with our members and employers to really start thinking about what the strategy, what is your end game here? And actually, if it's retention, let's look at what you're doing when young people start within your organisation too. So we are really proud of the members and the work that we've been able to do with them this year. The benchmark makes a difference. It isn't a tool, like I said, it isn't a punishment, it isn't a red flag. It is a moment of support, a moment of next steps for all employers of all sizes to start moving forward in their youth employment journey. I'll leave on the notes that for our members, the Good Youth Employment Benchmark will open again in September. What I will say is there's huge value in signing up for membership today, if you haven't already, to start understanding the practice, how we can put a youth employment strategy in place for you to make your submission a really useful thing for you to do.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Lauren. So we're going to get into a bit of a Q&A now. We're not putting pictures up because, Dean, you look nothing like Aileen, and I think she's thrilled about that. So we won't embarrass either of them by comparing and contrasting the things that they don't look like. I thought you were going to.
That's much better.
Okay, that's better. Okay, fine. I thought you were just going to ignore all of that and put Aileen up. Great stuff. So let's just do quick introductions. Dean, you get 15 seconds because you're on later. Just so think about that. Eleanor, would you just like to introduce yourself to the audience, please, today?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm not annoyed that the photos weren't shown. Thank you for that. But also thank you so much for the kind introduction, LJ. I heard special guest. I was looking around like, who is it? I'm Eleanor Marcy. I'm engagement manager at Youth Futures Foundation. You heard from my colleague Andrea earlier this morning. So I won't go too much into what we are because I think she did us justice with her amazing evidence brain, which is not where I'm coming from. But we're the National What Works Centre for Youth Employment. We've got a specific focus on marginalised young people. Essentially, we can define our work in sort of two buckets, and it's really important that I sort of illustrate this because I'm going to go on to sort of explain exactly why I'm on the stage today and why we've been so involved with the benchmark to date. Our two overarching objectives to bring about systems change in the employment system for marginalised young people. Well, the first bucket is all around finding curating and commissioning really high quality evidence, the best of the best evidence. And I think, Lauren, when you said that there are some real data nerds in the room, are probably looking at us. So we do this. We believe that evidence has the power for us to all in the room better understand England's youth employment challenge, which we know is persistent. When we dig deeper into the evidence, we can then sort of really synthesize what is actually working, because we know that the things that have been done year on year, it's not, the dial isn't shifting. So we're really trying to sort of whittle it down and find out what is working to address the challenges. So that's bucket number one. And then, of course, as data and evidence often does, it sort of sits on the shelf and it's not very helpful. And we're really, really keen for that not to happen in our case. So the second bucket of what we do is really putting that evidence into action and driving and influencing the change that we want to see, particularly with policymakers, employers and funders. We really, really want to see this evidence have direct impact on that change that we want to see for young people. We've had a long-standing relationship, fantastic relationship with Youth Employment UK, all the way back to our inception. 2019, LJ, you were our founding board members, a legacy that remains within the organisation. So we very much support and celebrate the work that Youth Employment UK does in changing the landscape for young people. Amazing achievements this year that we've been so pleased to see happen. The influence that Youth Employment UK and the GYES have had on the government's youth guarantee, amazing, such a success. The biggest census this year, was it? Did I hear? And then, of course, the launch of the Good Youth Employment Benchmarking Tool, for which we've been the funder of the development of the digital tool. And I'll sort of explain exactly why that was of particular interest to us. But it's been such a privilege to see it sort of develop into a really high-quality tool. Going back to those two overarching sort of objectives that we have, generating evidence, driving changes in practices and behaviours. This speaks so well to that. Our mission really is to empower employers with evidence-based best practice, but also we are minded that there are significant gaps in our understanding of the challenges and the fast-paced changing challenges that employers are facing, specifically in creating inclusive opportunities for marginalised young people. So the benchmarking is a really promising opportunity and a really multifaceted tool at both bringing in what we need to hear, what is it that employers are doing, what are they struggling with, what's the challenge, what's the opportunity, and then for us to sort of go away, take that away, really test it, and then pump back into the guidance and support that Youth Employment UK giving to employers and really sort of changing the way that employers are doing things. So alongside sort of funding the benchmarking tool, we're really excited to share that a massive thing that we're doing and investing in the next few years, it's a multi-year programme of employer trials. So that's really working in partnership with employers to trial and test those things that we all assume are really helpful and are really working. You know, the things that are really buzzy and hypey, blind recruitment, sharing interview questions, sort of inclusive language in job boards. They sound amazing. Do we know for sure? Can we say with confidence that they work? We're not yet sure. We need to test that, and we're going to do that. So what the benchmark is doing is really setting us up with the things that employers are saying that they want to do more of, you know, that they're trying out. We take that away, make sure it works, and then come back into the benchmarking tool to really influence the way that employers are doing the right things that are really going to help. So if there are any employers in the room who are trailblazers and really want to help that case, please grab us for a chat. We've got a stall. But just to finish on the benchmarking tool, as I say, it's been a privilege to watch it develop. The thing with all evidence is that the more, the better. Really, the more evidence that we can get, the more employers that take part in it, the clearer the picture. So we really need employers en masse to be doing this. And of course, the benefits that employers, I've seen you nodding furiously, but we all know that Youth Employment UK has such a portfolio of tools, resources, programmes, information and support that you can tap into. The benchmarking tool really isn't for those who are already further along in their journey. As you said, it's no judgment, it's no shame. If you're at the beginning of your journey, what a fantastic way to get that support and really bespoke guidance. So thank you for taking us on the journey. Thank you for having me here today. Really excited to see where it goes.
Amazing. I mean, what a plug. Thanks very much, Ellen. I love that. Did we get that on camera, Jamie? Are we good? Excellent. Excellent. Dean, thank you so much for stepping in and stepping up. And the reason that you're on the panel is because you're one of the employers that have completed the benchmark this year, received your report last week, which was hopefully quite comprehensive. Do you just want to give us a quick intro to Haven, and then we'll get into the benchmark report and the things you've learned?
Amazing. So I'm Dean Giles. I'm the Head of Learning Development at Haven. And if you haven't heard of Haven, we provide brilliant holidays, UK-wide, great memories that last a lifetime. So come and see me if you fancy one. So yeah, typically my role spans three key areas of skills: leadership, talent, and emerging talent and early careers. We've been on a journey since 2022, actually, coming out at the other end of COVID. We really appreciated and realised that it's now or never, and we've got a great opportunity to support young people that have gone through such a difficult time at that stage, with both the employee activity and the experience activity. So since 2022, we've gone slow to go fast. We haven't necessarily gone out there to conquer the world, but what we have done is actually formed a blueprint working with youth employment to ensure that we do things properly, but more so that we're inclusive by design with all of the activity that we deliver, and whether that be the activity through the explore side, or whether it's the experiences we create internally for young people. So that's a little bit about Haven. We're fortunate, really, at Haven that there's careers for all. I mean, there's not one kind of opportunity out there that a young person couldn't connect with. If people enjoy, working outside, we've got all our facilities areas. If people like working with people, we've got experience, F&B. If people are quite sporty, we've got activities and leisures. But then we've also got all of the great opportunities that are essentially focused as well through commercial and finance and brand marketing. So a big aim of ours is actually to raise aspirations and to connect young people with the right opportunities to ignite that fire and to hopefully then lead them into the first stage of their employment.
One of my favourite employers, I have to say, when we started working together back in 2022, there was a real recognition that actually some of Haven's locations, beautiful as they are, live in highly deprived areas across our coastal lines. And actually these are places and spaces where good quality opportunities for young people become fewer and far between. And your leadership team, your chief exec, I mean, they had promised me that I was going to get a famous international England rugby player as part of the project, which is why I said yes. We're still waiting. But they had got a real vision of where they wanted to become an employer in their community too. Do you just want to sort of touch on that partnerships that you're building with schools in some of those spaces without spoiling your speech for later either? It's got a difficult balance now today.
So I think, typically Haven run along the coastlines, and as LJ said, we operate in some of the most deprived areas. So we've got a great opportunity when it comes to focusing on social mobility and also neurodiversity as well. And I think that was probably one of our main prime focuses, is that, how can we reach everyone, but also provide those inclusive experiences that also support people from various different backgrounds and demographics. And we've learned that, kind of one size definitely does not fit all. You can kind of go in with a concept, and working with the schools, you'll learn that every school is very, very different. But it's really important to go into that school, understand how that school operates, speak to the students, and understand the challenges that they face, and also the opportunities that they're looking for. And then as an employer, take a step back and actually tailor those opportunities to meet that demand, and being able to flex those opportunities is really key to that. We operate across 7 schools right now, and every school is different. So to have that ability to kind of be really agile in what we're delivering as an employer is really important to our model.
Yeah, great stuff. And just on the benchmark, so this year your team, and it really was a team effort, took part in the Good Youth Employment Benchmark. The key elements that you took away as a team in terms of the learning of who Haven are, where you are in your journey?
Yeah, so I think, again, I'll just reinforce the benchmark has been a game changer for us. I think when we started out in 2022, we had very little data to kind of suggest where we were, no line in the sand at that point. And, we've done a considerable amount of work since then. But by doing the benchmark this year really has helped us reinforce the work that we have done and we are continuing to do. But more so, it allows us to be much more scientific and take a step back to look at the opportunities that we have. So whilst we had a 5-year plan in 2022, the benchmark has enabled us to now take a step back again and reevaluate whether that 5-year plan, that plan is still valid, and whether the priorities within that plan still remain the same as they did within 2022. And that's what we'll be using that data for.
Amazing stuff. And I guess year on year, you'll continue to get a new measure and a new line in the sand to see that progress. Lauren, one of the things that we've done together with Haven is really get those school partnerships up. And I think you talked about it, that if young people don't feel connected to those partnerships and it's just a case of employers coming in and they don't recognise that might be for them and that was an experience that was designed for them. What more and what have we seen in the benchmark in that kind of school space is working, do you think?
Thank you. And it's one of the biggest challenges. How do we go into schools, engaging with young people who are 11 years old and be able to kind of monitor and measure what difference we make when they turn 19, 20, or kind of 16, 17, 18 too. So it can be difficult to do, but particularly if you don't know what you're doing it for and why. I think one of the biggest issues with kind of what we can measure, how we can access that data is the why. What are we doing it for? What are we going to use this for? So if we can all just agree that we are good human beings, we understand GDPR as much as anyone understands GDPR, and that from a legitimate interest, we will kind of start to understand young people. I think it's about using the tools that are available and exist already and meeting young people where they're at. I really tried to struggle to answer this question without just plugging our own resources, but a little bit, annual review might come up. It's fine. But actually utilising a space where 4 million other young people are every year, exploring careers and understanding them. You can go in as an employer, as Haven, and share with young people at the end that you have a profile, you have a place on a Youth Employment UK website. Other providers are available, but they're not as good. And that is where you'll put information about work experience. That is where you'll put information about taster days you might be running. That is where your apprenticeship opportunities will be too. And then I would also just think about relating and interacting with those young people too, getting their feedback and insight as to what they found enjoyable, what they are going to take from it and what they're going to do next is almost as valuable as, and will help you build better programs. It isn't just about having someone's email address for 6 years so you can get them and make them an apprentice, but it is about doing good for the whole sector, doing good for young people, and you being a brand that has supported those young people on their way too. So I think it's a really long way of saying have a profile on our website.
Excellent. Eleanor, YFF have done some incredible work around race disparity, and I think we can make a lot of assumptions that actually just going into a school or doing a work experience is a good job well done. But actually what we're really learning about data is the differences and how those experiences relate to individuals. And I just wonder if you might want to just talk about some of that sense that you have from the work that you do, particularly around race disparity.
Yeah, it's really important that we recognise that, all young people have very different experiences of the workplace. We published our report, Discrimination in Work, this year, which was a really big piece of work for us. We've done it for a few years now. We do an annual survey of ethnically minoritized young people. And as you can imagine, the results from that survey are quite stark. They paint a picture that there are real disparities still that exist in work and in sort of getting in and getting on in the workplace, and we cannot look away from that. So please do read that report. It's really important that we have that data, because without that data, we don't know really what the problem is, and it really needs to come straight from the horse's mouth, which is young people. Young people need to be empowered to tell their stories. So there are some really, really useful bits of guidance in that report directly for employers and policymakers alongside that. But yeah, one around data collection is a commitment from employers to take part in not just gender pay gap reporting, but also ethnicity pay gap reporting, going further, disability pay gap reporting, those kind of things. Really going that extra mile to make sure that we've got this national and local sort of data set is super important for us in getting the picture, the bigger picture in what's going on. So yeah, some really useful resources on our website there.
And I think that's just a testament to that point around data collection, is we can make big assumptions, because I pretty much think we were all 16 once, I'm just checking, but we were. So we can make a lot of assumptions as adults about what young people need from us. But actually, it's the data that tells a story, whether it's the Youth Voice Census, whether it's race disparity data, whether it's your own data about really how inclusive are your opportunities, how big is that reach. It really does help you stay informed and keep true to the strategy around inclusion. One of the things that I talk about a lot at Youth Employment UK is why we ban the term Gen Z. There are 12 million young people within that Gen Z category. Now, when we're thinking about inclusion, I know this with you in the room, there is no way can you think about inclusion and then coin the term Gen Z to consider how you might apply your thinking to an entire generation of 12 million people, because those two things don't go hand in hand. And yet often we can get caught up going, right, what does Gen Z need, and the Gen Xers and the whatever else and other generation I might have been. But actually, it's really, really important that we recognise the individualness of the young people and the spaces and places that they're coming, which makes it harder, right? Tailoring, Dean, is super hard, because it means you can't just do one thing and hope that, mud sticks. So how are you tailoring to some of those young people, particularly as we think about the social demographics within the groups that you work with on site? It's not always easy either, is it?
No, I'd say it's probably one of the most difficult bits of actually going out into a school and kind of wanting to offer the best value. I think for us, when we think about our landscape, it's definitely about the quality of the programs, not the quantity. And I think, we're not trying to get out to the masses. We're trying to do the right thing by every single individual. And it comes back down to that listening again. I think, there are multiple scenarios you can find yourself in where, there are different challenges for individuals. I think one of the biggest things that you need to do is obviously listen to that, but then look at alternatives, look at what you can do and what you rather than what you can't. I think actually focus it in a real positive way, because there are always opportunities for every individual. Everyone has talent, everyone has interests, everyone has the opportunity to go out there and do something. And actually, if we can support that in some form, then we've already started that journey on a good stead. I think there's still more we can do. I think, we again, I'm not going to talk too much about what I'm talking about later, but, I think there's much more we can do. But I think it's personalising where you can. There's a big part around how we equip our own team as well to support people in the workplace. You can't just assume that, you can bring young people in and team are going to automatically know how to engage, how to communicate, how to, take them on a journey. So there's a big development piece for us internally to ensure that our own team are supportive, they're equipped to support people, and actually they feel, supported themselves and educated to kind of go out there and deal with all types of scenarios.
Oh, that's an excellent point, actually, around line managers, Lauren. We've had a lot in the census over the years, haven't we, from young people that they've got stuck at that point when they get into work, that the lack of support, the lack of tailoring is hindering. And we hear from really great employers, some for sure who are in the room today, and I know I've had a lot of conversations where you get a chief exec or a senior leadership team, a HR director who's driven to kind of create quality opportunities for young people. but then they're on a manufacturing site 300 miles away, and you've got no sight of what is going on that site with that, site manager and operations manager. What's the answer to some of that kind of disconnect between corporate and delivery from a business perspective, Lauren?
It is, I think we're going to use the word a lot today. We've talked about connections and systems for the morning. I think this afternoon we'll talk about kind of personalisation and tailoring what you're doing to the right audience too. So we hear from young people in the workplace that when work is frustrating, is that they don't always feel that they really belong there. And from an employer perspective, we can hear that it does feel like a Mars and Venus moment too. We will have 4 generations in the workplace all at the same time. And by the looks of it, we're all going to be working until we're a lot older. I'll be doing this in 50 years, I reckon. Oh, and by the time we're allowed not to work. So it is about understanding there are differences. And we see in the data, and as we talk to employers, for the most part, we've had to kind of work with employers to do any sort of line manager training to start with, not just young people. And I think sometimes within organisations, within HR departments, it's like, why are we only focusing on young people? But we're not only. Like, if you do support line managers to support young people, you are supporting everybody too. When we think about the training and line manager training for young people, and it's something that we've been working hard on in the background. It's almost like I get all the plugs. I'm not sure. But it's something we've been working hard on in the background to think about line manager training for young people. But actually, what line manager training for young people is it's training and support for people on the very start of their journey. When we think about multi-generational workplaces, when we think about changing sectors, and we think about what the world and life is like now for us, actually good youth line management training is just good line management training. It is about understanding people and putting the right tools in place too. And then I think there's further tailoring for making it make sense to being in an operation environment. I know from the data that there are lots of big inductions, and I've worked for some large organisations, I've worked for some small ones, and you go in and you hear this amazing moment from the employer about all of the great work that they do, and then you never see your job translated. So I worked for one of the large banks, and it was, those amazing showcases of videos of what it's like to work in finance and banking. I was working in IT and operations HR with unions. I never saw my job reflected in that. The whole induction is and was about brand and moment. And there is a time and a place for that. But actually, we have to celebrate what the work is that you're going to do too, and showcase all of it within those moments.
Yeah, really important. And alongside that line manager training often comes mentoring, Eleanor. And I know that YFF have done quite a bit of work on building the evidence. Does mentoring really help for those young people? And I just will give you kind of a final word on why it is important to test and learn the things that we are doing a lot.
Yeah, it's really important, and I've been really interested to hear all your thoughts about what good quality work means, and really understanding we're doing a big piece of work to define that, and that purpose-driven young people really want to understand what's the bigger picture, what are they helping to sort of do in the workplace. Yeah, so on mentoring, I think there's been a really interesting similarity that I've seen between some of the benchmarking findings and the picture that we're seeing with mentoring. And that is, sort of in a nutshell, that often we're seeing that programs that are sort of hosted by an employer are sort of done in silo. So, for example, the CV workshop in a school might be done by the recruitment team. They go off and do that. And then you've got the apprenticeship program, which is run by a completely separate team. It might be the learning and development team. They're not speaking to each other. And what that means is that employers don't have this sort of longer, bigger picture for a strategy, that youth employment strategy that you talk about, that really feeds their sort of workforce planning. And so what we're seeing is that, yes, okay, you might be doing the work experience program, or yes, okay, you might be giving mentoring. Does that actually result in a good quality job that young people are happy to stay in for a long time? We're not quite sure. And that really speaks to the evidence on mentoring. The evidence basically says that the impact of mentoring is quite low, but positive, but only if it's sort of part and parcel of a component of a wider programme. What mentoring could be helpful for is things like school attainment or youth offending as part of a bigger picture of a young person who might be far away from the labour market. So the advice really for employers is to think of mentoring and all of these other interventions as part of a bigger picture. I guess if you're only gonna, if you've only got the finances, if you're an SME and you can only really afford to do one thing, is it going to be mentoring that really helps to shift the dial? I'm not so sure. Mentoring of apprentices, now we're onto something. But yeah, if an employer is going to invest in mentoring, there are a few things that can be done to make it more meaningful. I think the thing that came out from the evidence in particular is the matching. So the matching between those with lived experiences, and that, just to loop back to that ethnic disparities piece, I think could really answer to some of the sort of stark statistics that we're seeing around discrimination in the workplace. So 48% of the young people, ethnically minoritized young people that we surveyed, said that they had experienced racial discrimination in the workplace, and of those, 79% said that they didn't report. And I'm just thinking, if there was a role for mentoring within a workplace, whether that was for entry-level employees, apprentices who feel like, they don't really have a voice yet, they don't really know how to be a part of that speak-up culture, that could be really powerful. But so, yes, mentoring as a part of other interventions, yes.
And I think, Dean, I'm going to let you have the final word, because I think what I heard when I came to visit the offices, no Rory the lion or anything. It's a tiger, whatever, but there was nothing. But when I came to visit the offices, the team spoke about how actually the learning through the benchmark is going to improve your return on investment, because it's this thing here that we're just talking about, right? When you know why you're doing something and it's connected to a strategy and you're doing the follow-up, actually as an employer, it might feel like a heavy upfront investment. But do you see that long-term improvement in recruitment, retention, time, the energy, the impact that you're going to have through things like the benchmark?
Yeah, absolutely. I think now we understand where we are in the landscape, and kind of we've got that kind of line in the sand. Not only do we know kind of what activities are going to make a real difference, but we'll be able to kind of track that year on year. I mean, we can be not just inclusive by design, but we can be data-led by design as well. And I think that's a really nice place to be as we kind of move on through this journey. And I think, again, one of the biggest parts of that, and we talk about mentoring just there, kind of I was reflecting, it's just about having great conversations with young people. Take out the term coaching, mentoring, all of that, that kind of puts a structure to it. It's about taking time just to sit with a young person, truly show you care, that you understand, that you're interested, and actually to find out, what their aspirations are, what the things they enjoy are, and try to connect those dots so that they can actually get that start onto their first stage of their career. And it's likely that they will change their minds a number of times during the early parts of their stages, but at least you've created a bit of aspiration into getting that first step into that career. So I think, regardless of where we move forward, I think the data is really, really important. I think the benchmark is absolutely brilliant. I think it's great to have this this year. And a little plug, if you haven't already done it, go out there and do it, because I think the insight that you get is so valuable. We've been in operation for a long, long time, and we've never been this data rich when it comes to the youth employment landscape. So, yeah.
Amazing. Should we give them a big round of applause? Thank you, everybody.